Have you ever stopped to truly consider how much of your daily anguish stems from your obsessive need for control? I'm not just talking about external control, your job, your bills, your meticulously planned routine. I'm talking about internal control, that suffocating need for certainties, the yearning to know what will happen tomorrow, to perfectly understand who you are, what you want, where the hell you're going. Society sold you a lie, that life is a mathematical equation, waiting for definitive answers. But the truth, the one few have the courage to face, is that this relentless hunt for certainties pushes you away from what you most desperately seek: peace. Perhaps you're there, exhausted, drained from trying to predict the unpredictable, from architecting perfect plans that crumble with the slightest breath of chance. Maybe you live in the limbo of anxiety, where every shadow of uncertainty becomes a monstrous threat, where the unknown is an enemy to be annihilated. But what if the problem isn't uncertainty itself? What if the real poison is your stubborn refusal to accept it? Michel de Montaigne, a 16th century French thinker, a man who dared to dive into his own mind while the world around him clung to dogmas, understood this before any of us. He didn't seek ready-made answers. He learned to live better with the questions. And that's what you need now. Not more flimsy certainties, but a new relationship with that which, by its very nature, cannot be controlled. In this video, I won't offer you a map with a treasure at the end. I will propose a different path, a rawer, more courageous, and paradoxically lighter way to face life. I will show you, through Montaigne's brutally honest wisdom, that when you stop fighting the unknown, something fundamental shatters within you. Anxiety loses its grip on your insides, the pressures diminish, and for the first time in a long time, life might start to seem simpler. But make no mistake, this simplicity isn't a gift from the outside world. It's not a change in circumstances. It's an internal revolution, and it begins now, the instant you decide to let go of the reins, to abandon the illusion of control, and to walk with me, not towards answers, but towards a new way of being in the world. Are you ready? Because this journey, unlike anything you've been taught, begins with a single powerful admission: I don't know. And realizing that this, in fact, is perfectly okay. Montaigne wasn't a philosopher of the pulpit. He didn't create complex systems or try to fit the world into rational formulas. He wrote from his own skin, investigating the most unstable and mysterious object that exists: himself. His texts are not treatises, they are mirrors. He didn't write to convince you, but to invite you to think, to doubt, to question, to look within yourself without fear, or rather, despite the fear. While others sought universal truths, Montaigne embraced the opposite. He didn't know, and the more he lived, the more he realized that knowing little about the world, and even less about himself, wasn't a flaw. It was a rare wisdom. What do I know? He constantly asked, not as a provocation, but as a starting point. Because admitting ignorance for him wasn't an intellectual failure. It was a liberation. It was stopping the pretense, the maintenance of masks. It was lifting the burden of having to be someone right, complete, impenetrable. The modern world, with its cult of instant opinion and manufactured certainty, rejects this humility. We live in an age where one must have a stance on everything, certainties as sharp as blades. Montaigne offers you the antidote, the chance to be human before being ideological. He believed that our fragility, our doubts, our contradictions are not weaknesses to be corrected, but essential parts of what makes us truly alive. And perhaps that is exactly what you need to hear right now. You no longer need to uphold false certainties to be worthy. You don't need to know everything to move forward. It's okay to be incomplete. Montaigne allowed himself to change his mind, to contradict himself. He understood the natural movement of the human mind. Instead of fighting against it, he embraced it. In an age when everyone shouts, he whispers. In an age of hard certainties, he teaches the lightness of doubt. And if you feel lost, crushed by the demand to be someone stable, defined, unchangeable, perhaps what you lack isn't direction, but freedom. The freedom to change, to not know, to simply be. But Montaigne doesn't just invite us to doubt. He warns us about the price of fleeing from it, because the more we try to control life, the more suffering we generate. And it's precisely this silent suffering, born from the desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable, that we're going to talk about now. You try to control everything, don't you? Tomorrow, other people's reactions, your career, your body, your feelings, even what doesn't depend on you. And the more you try to hold the reins of life, the more it slips away. It's like trying to grasp water with your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it flows through your fingers. Have you ever noticed how much this cost you? This obsession with control isn't just exhausting, it's toxic. It turns you into a prisoner of unrealistic expectations, a permanent inspector of everything that could go wrong. And this has a name: anxiety. Anxiety at its core is the fear of the unpredictable. It's the desperation for guarantees in a world that offers none. Most people live in this constant state of alert, trying to anticipate every curve in the road, as if that could prevent the accidents of the soul. But Montaigne knew something that modern psychology only confirmed centuries later. To live attempting to predict the future is to live in a state of war with reality. You see, human suffering doesn't just come from what happens to us. Often, it comes from our futile struggle against what happens. It's the desire for life to be different from what it is. It's the denial of the natural flow of things. Montaigne accepted his pains, his losses, his uncertainties, not as something to be eliminated, but as an integral part of existence. And by doing so, he freed himself from the burden of resisting everything. Notice, the most controlling people are also the most tense, the most exhausted, the most inflexible. They don't relax because they believe that if they're not always in command, something terrible will happen. But this belief doesn't protect, it imprisons. Montaigne, on the contrary, proposed a conscious surrender, not a cowardly resignation, but a courageous acceptance that the world is not your slave, and that your mind needs to learn to flow, not to dominate. And herein lies the cruel irony. The more you try to control, the more frustrated you become. And the more frustrated you are, the more you think you need control. It's a vicious cycle that swallows you whole. And what do you gain in the end? A tense body, an exhausted mind, and a soul without peace. Montaigne shows us another way. Living well isn't about controlling everything. It's about knowing how to coexist with what cannot be controlled. If this dissection of your inner struggle is starting to make sense, a click on the subscribe button for Mind Architect Lab ensures you don't miss the keys to dismantling these chains. Stay with me. But how do you do this in practice? How do you learn to live with the unpredictable without losing yourself in it? The answer lies in Montaigne's own attitude towards life, the constant practice of self-reflection, not as a way to coldly analyze oneself, but as a ritual of deep inner listening. While the world cried out for certainties, Montaigne withdrew into silence to observe what was within him. And what he found wasn't immediate clarity, but a whirlwind. Contradictions, fears, confused desires, inexplicable impulses. Everything that most people prefer to hide or ignore, he chose to confront, but not as one who judges, as one who listens. Montaigne's great genius wasn't in creating theories about the human mind. It was in having the courage to become a living experiment of the human condition. In his essays, he doesn't write as one who teaches, but as one who shares a process. He thinks aloud and invites the reader to do the same. By narrating his own doubts, his most intimate impulses, his changes of opinion, and even his moments of weakness, Montaigne shows us something revolutionary. You don't need to be right all the time. You just need to be present with yourself. This practice of constant self-observation, without filter and without mask, is one of the deepest forms of self-knowledge that exists. But be careful. Observing yourself isn't about torturing yourself with criticism. It's about learning to look inward with honesty and compassion. It's about realizing when you're trying to deceive yourself, when you're pretending to know what you don't know, when you're forcing yourself to maintain an image that no longer represents you. Montaigne wrote to free himself from these shackles. I am human, and nothing human is alien to me. In other words, everything that resides in you, no matter how confusing or uncomfortable it may seem, is a legitimate part of who you are. And do you know what the most powerful aspect of this practice is? It dissolves shame. When you begin to observe yourself with sincerity, you realize that much of your suffering comes from the attempt to be something idealized. Montaigne reminds us that we are not marble statues. We are mutable, flawed, and beautifully imperfect beings. The simplicity we seek begins when we stop fighting against our own nature. And here comes a powerful key. This acceptance is not passivity. On the contrary, it's the first step towards any real transformation. But there's another essential layer to this journey. Because even if you start to observe yourself, you still need to deal with something inevitable. Change. Nothing in you, in others, or in the world remains fixed. And as long as we don't understand this truth and don't learn to live with it, we will continue to suffer. Most people live as if life should be a straight line, as if one day, by acquiring certain knowledge, stability, or success, everything would finally fall into place. A fantasy sold by religions, schools, gurus, and even corporate culture. But this fantasy is precisely what distances us from reality and from peace. Montaigne saw this with rare clarity. He knew that everything in life pulses in flow. Our thoughts change, our bodies age, people come and go, our desires transform, our certainties dissolve. Nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed, nothing is definitive. To try to live as if it were is to prepare the ground for frustration and emotional collapse. Change is not an accident, it is the essence of existence. Montaigne accepted his changes as part of his humanity. Constancy is a virtue of mechanical minds, he provocatively stated. Living well wasn't about clinging to a fixed identity, but about dancing with impermanence. Have you noticed how most of your fears are linked to the possibility of change? Fear of losing someone, fear of losing a job, fear of things changing. But what if, instead of resisting, you began to embrace these transformations as part of the natural process of life? The lightness that so many seek doesn't come from forced stability, but from inner flexibility. Recognizing change as natural, however, doesn't solve everything. One must know how to deal with this instability from within. And this is where Montaigne offers us a path. The construction of mental habits, of internal rituals that help us live better with uncertainty. Philosophy is useless if it doesn't touch real life. How exactly does one live with uncertainty? It's a constant practice, a re-education of the mind. It requires discipline, not the rigid military kind, but that of commitment to your own freedom. Here are some Montaignian principles that can truly change the way you deal with life. 1. Question your certainties. Every time you feel 100% sure about something, stop, observe, reflect. Absolute certainty is often a disguise for fear. 2. Practice self-questioning as a ritual. Write. It doesn't matter if it's a diary, a letter that will never be sent, or a loose note. Putting your thoughts on paper is a powerful way to make visible what troubles you. 3. Embrace impermanence as an organizing principle. Plan, yes, but know how to let go of the plan when life changes, because it will change. Flexibility is true strength. 4. Cultivate humor in the face of your own fragility. Yes, laugh at yourself. Montaigne didn't take himself too seriously, and that's why he was so profound. Humor is a way not to be crushed by your own demands. 5. Reserve moments of silence to be with yourself. No distractions, no phone, no stimulation. Just presence. It is in silence that you hear what you really think. All of this only makes sense when you see the real value behind this practice. Freedom. The freedom to be who you are, without needing to have all the answers. The freedom to live lightly, even when nothing is certain. If this journey so far has resonated deeply, share in the comments what certainty you are ready to question today. Your experience might be the mirror someone else needs. And of course, if you haven't already, join our community of mind architects by clicking subscribe. In the end, everything you tried so hard to control was, from the very beginning, uncontrollable. Life wasn't made to fit into your emotional spreadsheets, nor to obey your idealized calendar. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Feelings will change. And none of this is a mistake. It is simply the nature of things. Montaigne understood this with an almost uncomfortable clarity. He saw that suffering doesn't come from change itself, but from the resistance to it, from the refusal to accept that life is flow, not form. When you embrace uncertainty, something changes. Not in the world out there, but within you. Rigidity begins to give way. Anxiety loses its meaning. You stop fighting against what is and start flowing with what presents itself. This is not resignation. It is wisdom. It is emotional maturity. It is freedom. The freedom to live without the burden of having to understand everything, of not needing a label for every feeling, an explanation for every pain, a right path for every choice. Life does not demand perfection from you. It only asks for presence. The simplicity we seek so much is not outside. It's not in a life without problems, in an impeccable routine, or in a completely planned future. It is in the moment you allow yourself not to know. In the moment you say, with honesty and courage, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Because it is in that space of humility that true peace is born, the peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, the peace that comes from within. Montaigne taught us that by accepting our ignorance, we become more human and more free. And if you've made it this far, if this message resonated within you, it's because there is a part of you ready to let go of the weight of control, ready to breathe more lightly, ready to live with more authenticity. So, tell me, what in you still resists the unknown? What do you feel when you look to the future and see no clear answers? Comment below. Share how this reflection touched you. I read every comment attentively, and rest assured, someone will recognize themselves in your experience. This exchange is powerful. If this journey has made sense to you, the invitation is to continue diving into the depths of your own mental architecture. Subscribe to the Mind Architect Lab channel and activate notifications so you don't miss the next master keys that can unlock your potential. You've already taken the first step. Keep going, because this path is yours. Master your mental blueprint. Stay sharp.